Let me surprise you. A confusion of theories abound about what our sun is and how it operates. Primarily, the confusion is divided into two groups of theories based on completely opposite concepts. One concept is centered on the Big Bang creation ideology. It speaks of a gigantic explosion 13.8 billion years ago, in which all the matter and energy of the entire universe was created in a single place in the first 3 minutes of the explosion. The explosion is deemed to have furnished all the dust of the cosmos that was driven apart by the shock wave into all directions, where it condensed by gravity into planets, stars, and galaxies. The mainstream science consensus is that the Sun is a sphere of hydrogen gas that is internally heated. Gravitational compression is deemed to have raised the temperature of its core to 15 million degrees, and to an unimaginable great density at its core of 150 times the density of water. The temperature and pressure is deemed to be so great that hydrogen atoms at its core are forced to combine into heavier atoms, primarily into helium atoms. And it is further deemed that the process liberates energy, which is deemed to be the energy that the sun radiates. It is deemed that the energy generated reaches the surface over a span of about 10,000 years to 170,000 years, or up to 30 million years, as it was once believed. Whatever the case may be, the widely accepted theory of the nature of the sun is full of holes and paradoxes, and is devoid of evidence that exclusively supports the theory. So let's look at the paradoxes. Paradox number 1 is that the observed sunspots, which are holes in the sun's surface, are dark spots, not bright spots as they should be if the sun was internally heated. The dark umbra of the sunspots is theorized to result from dark energy streaming through the photosphere, blocking the light from within, which is a paradox in itself. Paradox number 2 is that the sun emits streams of free plasma particles as solar wind. The solar wind, made up of plasma particles, shouldn't be happening when the nuclear fusion process deep inside the sun is set to combine atoms into larger ones, rather than tearing them apart to produce plasma. Paradox 3 is that the solar wind accelerates as it flows away from the sun against the force of the sun's gravity up to a distance 100 times greater than the distance from the sun to the earth, where it then forms the heliosphere. Paradox number 4 is that the sun's surrounding corona is enormously hotter than the sun itself. This shouldn't be possible when the heat comes from within. The outside shouldn't be hotter than the inside. Paradox number 5 is that the Sun is 1,000 times too light for a gas sphere of its size if one compares the Sun with known gas planets. With Jupiter being a gas planet of twice the volume of Saturn, Jupiter weighs in with twice the overall mass density than Saturn, as the natural consequence of greater gas compression by Jupiter's greater gravity. But if one extends the comparison to the Sun, which has 1,000 times larger volume than Jupiter, the principle of gas compression isn't reflected anymore. The Sun weighs in with roughly the same overall mass density than Jupiter. That's a paradox. The Sun is 1,000 times too light in this comparison for a gas sphere of its size, especially with a compressed core that is deemed to be 150 times denser than water. The measured facts defy the gas-sun theory. Paradox number 6 is that giant stars shouldn't exist, like the star Uvaiscuti. This star has a 5 billion times larger volume than the Sun, but only contains 10 times the mass of the Sun. This shouldn't be possible under the gas compression model. But this star does exist, and it outshines our Sun 340,000-fold. This too shouldn't be possible under the gas compression model for the Sun. Paradox number 7 is that the Sun also emits cosmic ray flux. Cosmic rays are single events of highly energized protons and electrons. It is deemed impossible for these to originate from a gas Sun, so that all cosmic ray events are deemed to be galactic in origin. It is reasoned that if the cosmic ray particles get intercepted in the Earth's thin atmosphere that's just a few kilometers deep, none would make it past the Sun's 500,000 kilometers deep outer layer of hydrogen gas. The paradox here is that cosmic ray fluctuations have been measured in proxy to consistently fluctuate in perfect synchronism with the Sun's activity cycles, as it is shown here in beryllium-10 ratios. The same lockstep synchronism of cosmic ray flux with the solar cycles is also being measured in real time by the Moscow Neutron Monitor. Paradox number 8 is that the Sun's activity is pulsing in 11-year solar cycles, and that the pulsing is changing in intensity. This fast pulsing and diminishing shouldn't be possible for a gas Sun in which the solar energy takes 10,000 years up to 170,000 years or more to reach the surface. Paradox number 9 is the sunlight that the Sun emits. With a few exceptions, all visible light is emitted from energized atomic elements. The light from atoms is emitted in different bands within the visible spectrum, according to the physical characteristic of the emitting atoms. Since the Sun is deemed to be a hydrogen star, its emission spectrum should match the emission spectrum of hydrogen gas. But this is not the case. It is well known that the Sun emits a richly homogeneous spectrum of light, and that this kind of spectrum can't possibly originate from a hydrogen gas star that our Sun is deemed to be. That's the paradox. Paradox number 10 is that the Sun is known to be surrounded by a wide range of atomic elements, which have been detected by their spectrum in the photosphere. Paradoxically, they shouldn't be found on the surface of the Sun. These heavy elements should have been purged from the surface by the solar wind, or should have been swallowed up by the Sun's gravity, especially the heavy ones like iron. Paradox 11 is that the Sun rotates faster at its equator than at its poles. Gate of educated opinions and cultivated illusions, and that one does this in a comprehensive manner. The reason is that ultimately the subject of truth is a single package. In the course of the exploration, the video introduces a number of revolutionary concepts that may seem surprising, but which are critical for the rational understanding of the dynamics of the solar system outside of the science fairy tale of the Big Bang cosmology. This means that the resulting presentation of the nature of our Sun as an energy source won't be of a type that is taught in schools, institutions, and is presented in science documentaries for the television audiences. Since the field of exploration that is presented here has become largely unknown, but covers a number of related concepts, the video exploration is being presented as a series of 7 parts. The evidence with which the Earth refutes the Big Bang cosmology is presented in Part 2, which thereby becomes a part of the evidence for the plasma Sun that has electric nuclear fusion occurring on its surface where its energy radiation originates. But before we can get to this, Part 1 of the series is needed to establish what the Sun really is. The internal nuclear fusion theory of the Sun, which is the generally accepted theory, has many flaws built into it, while no evidence actually exists that exclusively supports the theory. None whatsoever. That's shocking, isn't it? All historic and visible evidence supports instead the recognition of the Sun as a plasma star that is externally powered with cold fusion nuclear synthesis occurring at its surface. This affects our climate, economies, politics, and how we relate to one another as human beings. When the truth becomes known, the world is changing. The old theories no longer apply then. Caution. This video may be disturbing to those who cherish the illusion of the Sun being an invariable, internally powered nuclear fusion star. Part 3 presents evidence in the form of historic events of large plasma structures in the sky that were evidently visible in the past, but are no longer visible in our electrically weak times. Inversely, it also presents evidence of truly gigantic plasma structures that were never visible until recent times, when modern instrumentation made them visible to us. All of these prove that we live in the face of an electrically powered sun. Part 4 deals with the connection between the solar wind and the ice ages in the electric universe. Part 5 deals with the largest historic electric events in the solar system, their impact on life on Earth, and the imperative for us to save the future. Part 6 deals with the evidence for the near impending end of the current interglacial period and the start of the next ice age in 30 years' time, and the certainty of the transition. Part 7 deals with the biggest question that the entire series is leading up to. The question is whether we will respond to the scientific imperatives imposed on us by the future to protect our existence. We have the materials, technologies, and energy resources on hand to build the worldwide infrastructures with which to secure the human landscape in the harsh times ahead when the ice age starts anew and large parts of the world become uninhabitable. But will we use the resources we have? Will we build the 6,000 new cities that we need to enable the relocation of most of the great nations on Earth? Will we do this and live? Will we build the 20,000 kilometers of intercontinental bridges along the equator and the millions of acres of floating agriculture that the bridges would connect to? Will we do all of this and create a new world for us for a richer living under harsher conditions? Or will we do nothing and allow ourselves to be blown away with the winds of the cycles of the universe? Part 7 deals with the difficulty in answering these questions. In this context, the entire scene becomes no longer merely a physical challenge, or a technological question, or even a science issue, but becomes a spiritual challenge. The largest part of this spiritual challenge will ultimately be whether we will rouse ourselves to regard one another as human beings, with enough love for one another as the brightest diamond in the landscape of life, so that the currently faint spark of love for one another becomes a fire of universal love. Then, when we get to this point, the past will be free for the brightest future imaginable. And for this imperative too, we have the resources already at hand in the wonders of our humanity.